Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for Mad Men Season 7, Episode 4, The Monolith. Monolith, I don't know. But this episode definitely was not as good as the past 3 episodes. It still was great. It was another great episode. It just was not as good as the past 3 episodes, which in my opinion just were not as good. They weren't as good as the other episodes had been. And they were still good episodes, I will say that. This was still a great episode, as I said, but it just was not as good as the past 3 episodes, which were all fantastic. The past 3 episodes were great. And this episode was still great, just was not as good. So let's just get to it. I will say the one thing that I did like was that there were only 2 plots in this episode, so there was a lot more to show. This episode mainly focuses on Dawn and Roger. You got a little bit of Pete in the beginning, but it mostly focused on Dawn and Roger. Let's first go to Dawn. Dawn at this point, he's in very bad shape the whole episode. He's not really having too much to do in the office. He pretty much doesn't have too much to do, but what I do like about this episode is we do see that we are starting to approach a new decade, not really decade, but a new sort of lifestyle, because they introduced not only hippies in this episode, but also computers, which I'll get to. But the episode starts off where we see Pete. He's with his girlfriend Bonnie with his real estate agent / girlfriend. And he runs into George at the restaurant. George reveals to him that he's working at a new company called Burger Chef, not Burger King, Burger Chef. And Tom ended up having a heart attack. That's Pete's father. He had a heart attack, and Pete had no idea his father-in-law had a heart attack. And, George says, oh, he's fine, don't worry about him. And George returns to his date. So, Don heads into the office, and he appears very abandoned. And he finds a phone off the hook. He hears voices and upstairs. And he finds the entire staff meeting with a contractor who's turning their lounge to a computer room. Now, everyone is freaking out about this because they're all worried that this computer, which I didn't know was introduced in the 60s. I thought it was introduced in the 70s, but I guess it was the 60s. This computer is going to end up replacing them. That's what they're worried about. They're worried that the computer is replacing them, and they're not going to have any part in the office anymore. They're not going to have anything to do, and they're just very worried that this computer is going to replace them. So he heads into the office. He finds an orange flag that says New York Mets. He tosses it aside and lights a cigarette. Now, that scene doesn't seem that important, but it's very important later, which I'll get to. Now, Lou, Pete, Roger, and Ted are holding a conference call about George and his account with Burger Chef. And they inform Ted they're calling him back to his headquarters, and he refuses, tells them that, and basically they're trying to figure out who should we give this to. Now, Pete is meeting up with, now, there are 2 scenes going on here. We have Lou, Pete, and Roger all talking about, giving it to, who they should give it to. And then you have Pete meeting up with Bertram. Now, Pete's telling Bertram we should give it to Dawn, and Bertram basically says, well, that's not something that we should do, and, and Lou is very skeptical that Dawn will screw it up, and Pete says he thinks Dawn should take the account, and they all agree to give it to Dawn, and, that's what we think is going to happen. So Dawn meets up with Lloyd, who's a contractor installing the computer, and Dawn lets Lloyd know that he isn't pleased about the employees giving up their lunchroom and lounge. Lloyd gets that everyone in the office is threatened by the computer because they're afraid they're being replaced. And, he's really worried with this computer, how this computer is going to affect the rest of the office. He's very worried about that. So Lou calls Peggy into his office, and he informs her he's giving her a raise of $100 more a week, and writes it down on paper to make it more legitimate. And he informs her that she is in charge of Burger Chef account. She can compile a team of whoever she likes, but Dawn must be on the team. So that's what he decided to do, because I think he's very, Lou's very worried about Dawn. He doesn't really know if Dawn should take it. So he gave it to Peggy, and I think that was a good move, honestly, because Dawn at this point, he's realizing he knows what he's doing is wrong, but at the same, he knows that he's in very bad shape, but we did see that Dawn is not really changing. Peggy calls Dawn to her office. She reveals to him that she has selected him to work on her team for the burger campaign, and she wants to come with 25 tags so they can try and save the deal. So Peggy calls a meeting for Burger Chef, and Dawn informs her that he won't be attending. She tells the other members of his team to come up with 25 more tags himself since Dawn didn't complete any tags. So Lloyd pays Don a visit in his office, asks him for a lighter, and Don informs him that he is not working, because he's really upset that he's not getting his position back. And, Lloyd sits down and asks him about advertising assistance for his computer installation company. So Don heads to Bertram's office, and he insists that he wants to take on Lee's Tech. That's the company that's installing your computer, and he basically thinks that he would be good for that. So he knows their growth is going to be huge, and he wants to put together an ad campaign for them. And Bertram reminds him that his role in the company is very limited since they took him back and he isn't up to, to land new clients yet. So Don really can't decide that. And I do see Don's point because he's basically like, wait, what? You want me to be a janitor? Just whistle while I work? What do you want? I thought that scene was kind of funny. But basically what Don says is, you just want me to, be a janitor? Just whistle while I work? What exactly do you want me to do? Do you just want me to do a little thing? And I'd like to do, basically, Don just wants to do more. He wants to get his original position back. It really is one of those messages where you start from the bottom and work your way up to the top. I kind of think that's what the message is with Don in this episode. And he storms out, and right away, he makes a very, very bad decision that I definitely think is going to bite him in the ass later. You know that one rule that they said you cannot drink in the office? Guess what he does? He swipes a bottle of liquor from Roger's office, heads back to his office to drink. So not only did he disobey them, he's now drunk, and it's actually kind of funny, because he ends up calling up Freddy, and he invites him to go to a baseball game with him. It's kind of funny because he's completely drunk. And Freddy arrives, and he tries to sneak Don out of the office without anyone noticing he's been drinking. Don picks a fight with Lloyd, then Freddy drags him off, and they inform Peggy that they're going to a baseball game. Peggy vents to Joan afterwards that Lou is supposed to be on her team, and he owes her work and is just ditching the office and heading to the baseball game. So, Freddy takes Don back to his house, drops him off on the couch, and Don is still very confused. He really thought he's going to a baseball game. He wakes up a few hours later and finds Freddy in his house, and basically, he wants to know why Don is blowing his chance back at the firm. And basically, what he's telling him is that, look, I understand you want your position back. I understand that. But this is not doing anything. You drinking, you doing all this shit, it's not doing anything for you. So you need to sober up. Because he does not want Don to be like him. Freddy's the kind of person, Freddy tells him that, I'm the kind of person that always has to switch offices. I'm the only person, who's always getting moved, and I don't want you to end up that way. So he tried to be, I really like what he said to him here. I thought his speech was very well done. And he thinks it's ridiculous that they're making him write tags for Peggy. And Freddy tells Don to sober up and do the work, and then he will get his position back. So Freddy's pretty confident in Don, and I don't know though, because he's telling Don, "What are you gonna do? Kill yourself?" And I'm kind of thinking that's how this show is going to end. That Don dies. I'm thinking that's how it's probably gonna end, because the show honestly is all about Don. Even though we have other characters, it's basically Don Draper's story. So I'm thinking that Don is going to die probably in the final episode. That's not till next year. Yes, but I do think he's probably going to end up dying, because I just think that's how it's going to end. So Don arrives at the office the next day. He looks pretty, he looks sober and everything. And Peggy stops by the office, and he informs her he will have her tagged by lunch. She's satisfied, goes on her way, and he sits down at his typewriter and begins working. And I think that last shot is kind of him just thinking, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to accomplish. If I want to be where I am, this is what I need to do. Now, my only issue with Don's plot in this episode was there were no scenes with him and Megan, there were no scenes with him and Sally, and I wanted to see those. We have not seen him and Sally since episode 2. I want to see more scenes with him and Sally. I want to see more of, what Sally's doing. I liked seeing Sally in the second episode. That was interesting to see. There was no Dawn or Shirley in this episode either, which was a little bit surprising, but, I thought overall Don's plot was definitely very well done. However, I really loved Roger's plot more than I did Don's plot. Mona and Brooks meet Roger at the office, and apparently Margaret has run off to a cult with a bunch of... Basically, it turns out that... Remember Roger's daughter? Roger and Margaret, basically, they're forced to take care of Ellery because Margaret has run off with a bunch of hippies, which I was actually happy they introduced hippies in this episode because the poster, for this season is, very hippie-ish, so I was definitely thinking they were going to introduce hippies, so I thought that was definitely really interesting. Yeah, so Brooks needs Mona to watch their son, Bonnie thinks that Roger needs to go to the commune and drag Margaret back home. So that's exactly what they decide to do. He arrives at the office the next day. His secretary's met a message from Mona, and apparently Brooks is in jail in Kingston. So they head to Kingston to bail out Brooks, and on the way to jail, Mona rants about Margaret refusing to leave the commune. She's concerned about how Ellery is going to turn out, and in one weekend, his mom ran off to the commune and his father got arrested. So, obviously, she's very worried about that. Because Ellery, basically, he's forced to... Roger and Mona are raising him, so she's very worried about what's going to happen to Ellery, because, Margaret just ran off to hippies. His father's in jail. What is going to happen to Ellery? Is he going to end up screwed up? And we don't really know. But Mona and Roger, they head to a hippie commune to try to talk some sense into Margaret because they want her to get out of this. But as soon as they go there, she's now going by the name of Marigold. She's changed her name to Marigold, and she looks like she hasn't showered since she left home. So, we see her come out in like a, hippie suit, hippie thing and everything. And she insists that she and Brooks are happy, and he misses her. And she does miss Ellery, but she is staying at the commune until she finds herself, because that's why she left. She needs to find herself. And Mona insists she come home, and she informs her mom she doesn't want to wind up like her and have to lock herself in the bathroom every day with a pint of gin. So Mona storms off, gets in the car. Mona realizes, Mona's just like, I'm done here. You're not going to come home. I'm done. But Roger wants to stay with her because he wants to try and wine and dine their daughter and convince her to come home because he thinks that he can do it. That's what Roger decides to do, basically. So he's starting to learn the ropes of their society. He's smoking joints with them, and it seems like he's having a pretty good time, actually. And he wants to know why they have a truck but no electricity. And then they lay down outside in the grass. They call it a night. Margaret once again tells Roger how happy she is at the commune, and he says he knows she is, he can tell. And then she goes off somewhere with this other guy, and they end up sleeping together. He wakes up, she's not there, and she ditched him and went and slept in the house with one of the guys at the commune. He picks Margaret up, he literally tries to pick her up, put her back in the truck, and he informs her that she doesn't get to do this because Ellery needs her. And basically, Margaret tells him that Ellery is everything he needs and he'll be fine. And basically, she tells him that, look, you did the same thing to me, so what I'm doing is no different than what you did to me, so if you can do that to me, I can do that to Ellery. I have no problem, you clearly had no problem with it. I am surprised you have a problem with it now, and, I'm going to do exactly what you did to me, because you had no problem with it, so I don't see a problem either. And he realizes that he's not getting through to her, and he leaves. And that was the episode, and you know what, I really enjoyed it, but why was this episode called the Monolith? I looked up what a monolith is. It's like a statue. That had nothing to do with the episode. But I did like, I still really like this episode. I think it was a really good episode. Roger's plot I thought was a little bit better than Dawn's plot. I liked Dawn's plot. I thought they both were really good. I like that there were only 2 plots in this episode. What I really liked about this episode that I am wondering is, do you think Dawn is going to die? There's 3 episodes left this year of Season 7. The final 7 episodes are going to be next year, kind of like what they did with Breaking Bad. That's basically what they're doing with Mad Men. I'm looking forward to seeing these final 3 episodes. Do you think that Don will get his position back? I think he will, if he doesn't continue drinking. I think if he listens to Freddy's advice, he will, get there. Do you think that Peggy's whole burger chef, do you think that's going to be successful? I'm not really sure. Will Margaret come home eventually? I think she will eventually come home when Roger talks to her. But that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video. Also, there was no Betty in this episode, so I was that was my only complaint. There wasn't enough in this episode. There was no Betty, there was no Megan, there was no Sally, there was none of them. But that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for 24 Live Another Day, which I can't wait to review. So I will see you guys for that. Bye.